My name is Alain Pannetrat. The name, you can tell I'm French actually, but I live in Greece, and I work for Cloud Security Alliance, which is a global non-for-profit organization that is specialized in best practices for cloud security, and also leveraging how we can use the cloud to secure other forms of computing. And we're participating in the project called the EUSEC, the European Security Certification Framework. So to present a bit of context, I think a few years ago when we were talking about the cloud, people were saying they could see the advantage of the cloud, in terms of cost, and actually in terms of security, because often the cloud provider can give you a better security team than a small organization typically. So advantage in cost, advantage in security. But people were worried about compliance. They were saying, I'm putting my data in somebody else's hands. Is this going to meet my own compliance needs? How secure these things are? I remember just even 5 years ago, this was the main topic of cloud-centric conferences. But this problem was essentially slowly solved with certification. Today, most companies that wanted to move to the cloud are moving to the cloud, and they trust basically through the vehicle of certification. They see that when a cloud provider has undergone an audit, it gives them reasonable assurance that they can find trust, and they can match their compliance needs with what the cloud provider is offering. It started with, the most popular one is ISO 27001. In the US, it's SOC 2 today. And my own organization created a certification scheme. It's very similar to ISO 27001, but it's cloud-centric. The controls, the security controls that are part of the framework are essentially targeting the cloud. But it didn't stop there. Basically, certification has been a huge success, maybe even too much of a success, because now you see in the US, if you want to sell services to government, you need to go through FedRAMP. In Germany, they just created a specific certification for cloud that is called C5. If you want to process payment card systems, you have to undergo PCI DSS certification. And on and on. HIPAA is for health data. Spain has its own certification. ENISA, also based in Greece, it's not exactly a certification, but they have published best practices for cloud security, and many organizations are using it as a baseline. So again, you're saying, okay, I need to show that I'm doing what the ENISA recommends. So it becomes a problem for small players. Amazon, for example, has no problem doing everything. They have the money, they have the means. But for smaller players, it means going through all these certifications. Some of them are self-assessments, they're easier. Some of them are a lot of work. It's cost, it's time, it's money, and you repeat the same things all the time. That was the first problem we face today. Another one is that some companies, despite the success of certification, say, no, this is not good enough for me. Certification, I still don't trust the cloud. I don't want to go to the cloud because I have obligations from regulators to establish that I can trust my provider, not once a year when the certification is issued, but every month, every day, perhaps every minute. This is true in the financial sector, which is very burdened by some regulations, and also the e-health sector. And these actors are reluctant to move to the cloud because saying that, you got a nice ISO certification on January 18th, they're saying, yeah, but what is going to happen on January 19th? What is going to happen on the 20th? What is on 20th? Is the certificate still good? Was everything that has been checked still valid? So of course the methodology behind certification can actually give you some guarantees for time, but still they consider that this is not enough. So in the EUSEC project, we are trying to solve these two issues. First is to create a framework for multi-party recognition. The idea is that we have a lot of certification schemes. How can we make the conversion from one to another much more efficient than each time restarting from scratch? And the other one is to build a framework for continuous auditing-based certification. So transition from a world where you do ISO certification once a year or every 6 months, or to a point where you can actually say my cloud service is being certified almost on a continuous basis. So what is a multi-party recognition framework? So we want to avoid this. You know, this is a typical joke. You know, a project comes, they say there are 14 different certifications. We're going to create a super standard for certification that's going to kill them all, and then you end up with 15 standards. Now, what we want to do is simpler in a way. Consider certification X. You will have requirements C, B, A, D, and certification Y. Well, you have requirement B, C, D, E. Traditionally, if you want to obtain these 2 certifications, you're going to do this work twice. Most of the time, there's a lot of stuff that is common. So we're thinking, wouldn't it be simple to just take someone who has already done certification X? He just needs to make to add the diff, if I would talk about in dev terms. There's only 1 or 2 requirements that are different between the 2 schemes, so why not focus on those? So this is the main idea between multi-party recognition framework. It's more complex than this shows, obviously, because it's not just about requirements. 2 schemes may have different requirements in terms of auditors, in terms of time, in terms of renewal. All these things need to be mapped, compared. So it's not that simple, but that's what we're trying to build, a framework that allows you to, once you've done 1 certification, to obtain another one, to make it much easier. The goal is to reduce costs and to reduce the time that you need to move from one certificate to the other. When it comes to continuous auditing-based certification, the idea is that we're not going to audit once a year, like you do for ISO, or every 6 months, or every 2 years for others. The idea is, can we audit every month, every week, or every day, or even every minute? So actually, it's not here. It's not. You're not going to think of an information system as a global thing that you audit every minute. But there are some dimensions of an information system that you can audit very frequently, and others that do not need to be audited so frequently. So that's the idea we're building. Consider an example. Business continuity plans shall be documented and tested regularly. Something you see in lots of certification control frameworks. The fact that the business continuity plans are documented is not something you can test every minute. You can't just have someone always looking at the. This is something reasonable that you could assess once a year or every month. You can have a human actually check. Things are documented, yes, report, check a box. But there are other dimensions, technical dimensions, that you could actually check much more frequently. You can report the number of backup restorations that tests performed in a certain period. You can report the number of failures. Actually, this is some kind of information that you can check every day, every hour, and for some of these things, you could check even to the minute. I mean, if you have a requirement on password, the strength, this is something you can use automated tools to check these things in real time, all the time. So the idea of building a continuous auditing based certification is to use automation as much as possible. You cannot automate everything, but the idea is to have some aspects of the certification done by humans over, not every month, every 6 months, and some aspect based on tools that have been validated by the auditors to a certain degree. So in very high-level terms, the auditor comes in, does a traditional certification, and then, with the cloud provider, they decide on data formats and tools and metrics on how to measure security aspects of their system. And they establish a link between the cloud provider and the auditor, who will collect data and continuously update, based on the data collected, the status of the certification awarded to a specific cloud service provider. So our mission is to define principles, criteria, and requirements for multi-party recognition, continuous monitoring-based certifications, deliver rules, reference architectures, mechanisms, and tools for continuous assurance and certification. So in this project, we're not just defining the theory, like, in terms of governments or organization, how do we make this work? For continuous monitoring, we actually have a partner that has a tool that does security checks in real time, we have a tool that actually reports compliance. We're trying to integrate these tools together to provide continuous certification. Of course, traditional, as in all project, dissemination, exploitation, and the idea is that we hope that the things we're building here will survive the end of the project into some form of organization or I would say a certification scheme that facilitates against mutual recognition and continuous monitoring. So what do we have as input? We have already, as I said, my organization does certification for cloud, but we're not specifically, what we're building here would work for any type of certification, and actually we're also working with as some of on our advisory board we have BSI. We're going to look at their own, the C5 certification. Yeah, we're going to take all these existing certifications and try to build bridges between them, as I was explaining. We have tools. As I said, we have a tool for security scans and monitoring and measuring things. We have a tool to report compliance. It's called StarWatch. And from all this, we're going to build a governance structure for multi-party recognition and continuous monitoring. We're going to have tools that we're integrate together, and we're going to. One of the challenges actually in this project is that we're building. It's an innovation project. We're trying to. At the end of the project, we have to have something that is on, of almost commercial level. Here, we're not building from scratch. We actually have products. Our StarWatch, for example, is actually a real product. So our challenge is at the end of the project to have something that actually can be exploited commercially. So the consortium, it's an interesting mix. CSA, my organization, but we have NICSU and PwC. These are auditing firms. So we get their perspective on this. They're interested because for them, if this works, they can broaden their portfolio. Like some of them are specialized more. NICSU is specialized more in ISO. PwC is more specialized in SOC. They see that building bridges between certification schemes could allow them to broaden what they offer to their customers. 6SQ is a cloud broker. Fabasoft is a cloud provider. CaixaBank, and there we have two ministries, a ministry in Slovakia and a ministry in Slovenia. These are basically cloud customers. One from the perspective of a financial institution that has a lot of, that needs continuous certification. And then two administrative bodies who also have very strict rules to use cloud services. Fraunhofer, which is providing some of the technology that provides continuous monitoring of cloud services. So the work plan today, we're 1/3 of the project, and we're finalizing I would say the requirements, the basics of the framework. We have in the second phase we will have pilots, and in the end we will have results. It's a pretty traditional approach. To be honest with you, we're late. We're already asking the Commission for delays and stuff like that, because it turns out that even though I presented things like this, it may look, it's been very complicated. Again, because we have the constraint to make something that needs to be commercially working at the end of the project, and there's many things that you could say, okay, if it's just a demo, it's okay. But once you get in that area, there's a lot of things that we didn't think when we wrote the proposal. So it's quite a challenge. And to go deeper in the challenges is the very first one we've had is understanding each other. As I said, I mean, this is probably something you all face in projects when you have people with so many different backgrounds. Initially, the certification scheme was called Continuous Monitoring Based Certification, for example. Half of the people who actually joined us in the project said had a completely different understanding of what monitoring means. So they actually signed for the project thinking it was doing something else. And this is just an example, but coming to a common ground, and we've been learning a lot from each other, but this is a huge challenge, I think, in any project, but in this one, it's been a really big one. Another one is creating real-world pilots. Again, we want to prove that technologies are actually working in the real world, and one of the challenges is a simple pilot for continuous monitoring. Kaisha Mank is a very interesting. They really have a need to show that the cloud service they're using matches certain requirements continuously. So it's perfect. They said we're going to take this this application we want to put in the cloud and use your technology to demonstrate that it's continuously secure. Because our rule is we can only put something in the cloud if you can continuously certify that it's secure. So we're thinking, great. So we start building the pilot, and they say, but the tools you're using to verify that our application is continuously secure, how do I know that they are continuously secure themselves? And so it's a chicken and egg issue, because we have tools that are monitoring, but themselves, how do we prove to, like Aisha, that those tools are trustworthy as well? And then again, as I said, the end of the project aims to have real products, and so the technology readiness levels are challenging to meet. So this is essential. If you want to know more, you can visit our website. We're looking for a Ruby on Rails developer, actually. So if you know anybody based in Athens, that would be the best case scenario. So don't hesitate to send us an email. Thank you.
Thank you.